Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Watchung Booksellers podcast, where we bring you conversations from our Bookstores community of book professionals who talk about different aspects of the book world. If you're new to our podcast, thanks for joining us. I'm Kathryn, and I'm here with my co-producer, Marnie. Hey, Marnie.
Hey, Kathryn.
And we're just a little bit excited about this week's guests. Today, our own Margot Sage L. sits down with the amazing Emma Straub to talk about writing and owning a bookstore. But first, let's check in. Marnie, what are you reading?
I actually just finished Ali Smith's How to Be Both. It's part of our New York Times 100 Best Books of the 21st Century book club that we just launched, and this is the first book we're reading. What about you?
Since it is Banned Book Week this week, I just pulled off my shelf 1984 by George Orwell. Embarrassingly, I have never read it. I'm actually not going to be embarrassed. I'm just going to be honest. I've never read it, but I'm very lucky that I'm able to own it because it is my right as a reader. It's really important that we get to read these books whenever we damn well please. And in honor of Banned Book Week, we are having some authors and luminaries of the Montclair area stop by the store to talk about their favorite banned books. And so keep an eye out on our social media this week for some great stuff.
Yeah, so speaking of luminaries, we're really excited to welcome Emma Straub, who is a great friend of Watchung Booksellers. Emma Straub is the New York Times bestselling author of 6 books for adults. The novels This Time Tomorrow, All Adults Here, The Vacationers, Modern Lovers, Laura Lamott's Life and Pictures, and the short story collection Other People We Married. She's also the author of 2 picture books, Gaga Mistake Day, which she co-wrote with her mother, and Very Good Hats. She's a Guggenheim Foundation Fellow, and her work has been published in more than 20 languages. Emma and her husband own Books Are Magic, an independent bookstore in Brooklyn, New York.
And talking with her today is Margot Sage L., who is the owner emeritus of Watchung Booksellers and who continues to help with all kinds of author events and in-store activities. When she's not at the store, she's busy running around town with her grandkids.
Enjoy the conversation, and we'll be back after to fill you in on what's coming up in the store.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for coming out to the burbs to visit us and talk to us today.
Hi, Margot. I am so delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I was reminiscing that it was in 2012 that we met, that Christine Onorati from Word in Jersey City and Brooklyn, well, she didn't have Jersey City then, brought us together, and it was such a delight to meet you. And we've kept up over the years, although, as we were just saying, they were the most transitional years for you because it was before children, before bookstore, before, and it was that your first book?
It was my first novel, and the year before that I had published a collection of stories with a small press that Riverhead then bought and republished.
Right.
So now it looks like all of my books are at Riverhead and proceeded in this order. But I had a book before that. But yeah, I mean, it was wild. It was wild publishing that novel. What's so funny to me now is that, like, you could not have told me that I was not, like, the world's, not best novelist, but, like, most important up-and-coming novelist. Yeah. Like, I believed in my own...
As you should, right?
Power so much. And then, like, no one bought that book. Like, nobody bought that book.
Wait a minute. First of all, that was still in the days when you went on tour, right? Didn't you have a tour?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so that was cool.
No, they sent me on a tour. You know, I went all over. I had great events.
Yeah, but Riverhead was invested in you and building you, which is what publishers should do.
Yes, and I know, like, I do, you know, I'd say that nobody bought it, but it's just that my second novel, The Vacationers, sold so much more, like, has still sold the most of any of my books that, like...
Oh, even now still.
Even now. It's just, like, it was such a...
I mean, what I love is that you have a voice of, like, contemporary women, and it reflects the lives that we're all in one way or another dealing with, which brings me to my question. How the heck do you do everything? You're... okay, besides, you are an accomplished author. You are now a bookstore owner. You are a mother of how many? Two children and a wife. Let's not forget that. Yeah. And it's like...
and
tell us about how this all
and a daughter and a friend and like it's all of those all of those things. And the truth is that I'm never doing like all of those things well at any one given moment. That's the truth for sure. And my days are packed from start to finish. I mean, my kids wake up at 6 a.m. Screaming. Like, I have 2 boys. They share a room. They love each other so much. They are 8 and 11, and they wake up screaming, and they are screaming until they go to sleep at, like, 8 o'clock at night. Like, it's just...
Yeah, their energy level.
Constant noise. Yeah. And so we opened the bookstore in 2017, and in that period, I really was like, I need to devote myself to this. I am going to, like, sort of pause writing. Like, writing is not going to be my priority for a minute.
But you had experience, right? You had worked for Book Court for many years, which,
Yeah. So I worked for Book Court, which was our local bookstore in Cobble Hill in Brooklyn, for a bunch of years. But when I think about it now, it's like I had no responsibilities there. Like, I was a bookseller. Yeah. I was a bookseller, and I think I was a pretty good bookseller. I was extremely friendly. Yep. I remembered people. I met their babies. I knew their dogs' names. Like, all of those things. Yep. I was really good at that.
And you were relatively well-read.
Right. Yeah, right. And then I could recommend a book. Yeah. But that is still what I'm best at my bookstore. The only problem is that now I have a lot of other responsibilities.
Oh, boy. So in 2017, Book Court was closing.
Book Court closed, and what's funny is that people still sometimes say to me, like, oh, God, like, it was so sad what happened to Book. It was sad for us. Like, it was sad for the neighborhood that it was closing. But Mary and Henry, who ran Book Court, it was not sad for them. No, it was a choice. They chose to retire after 35 years, and they sold their buildings, and, like...
You could actually retire on something.
Like, it was great for them. It was great for them. And now I understand it more now, certainly.
Interesting.
Just how hard it is to run a small business. Period. A small business in New York City. Like, a small bookstore. Like, it is so challenging on a daily basis. Right. So the fact that they did it for 35 years, like, I will bow at their feet forever. It's incredible. I mean, and you too, Margot. Like,
and they built a real community in a bookstore, and Brooklyn was a little dicey. Yeah. So you give them a lot of kudos. Yeah. But,
for sure.
But you and Michael came in at a different time with different skills, and
Yeah.
You know, you just started running the minute you opened up.
Yeah, I know. And that was really one of the problems. Like, I mean, we had skills. We had a couple of skills. Like, I had people skills. Yeah. Meaning I knew a lot of people. Right. I knew all the writers. I knew all the editors. I knew all the publishers. I knew all the publicists. Like, I knew everybody. Yep. And Mike had been working in book design for...
I didn't know that.
I don't even know how long, 15 years-ish, let's say. So he knew how to make everything look great. Yeah. And he's actually organized.
That is a skill.
Yeah, so we had those skills.
That's great.
But neither of us had ever run a business before. Right. Neither of us had ever had employees before. Neither of us had ever just operated a space open to the public. Right. You know, like there were so many things that were new to us.
Well, I think because I too started, I always say, with all this naivete, but somehow if you think you can do it, you know, as long as you give yourself a little latitude for making mistakes and learning to grow. Yeah. I think you can do that with a bookstore.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what was tricky, I mean, the sort of good news, bad news for us was that we were coming into a neighborhood that was really used to supporting their bookstore. And because of all of my connections, like, we had a lot of attention.
A lot.
And so
There's a little jealousy, I have to say, in the bookstore world.
I mean, I don't think there was a way to avoid that, but like,
it was to your credit. Like, it's like a dream way of starting a bookstore.
Yes, but I will say the flip side to that is that we started going 100 miles an hour, you know, whereas I think that if we had been able to sort of start out more slowly and sort of build up more slowly, it would have given us time to learn things.
Interesting.
To learn things sort of without sort of as much pressure, whereas the way we did it, we were like just running 100 miles an hour. And so we made a lot of mistakes. We just didn't know anything. We didn't know anything. And so I would say it took us a couple of years to really figure out even what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And then it was 2020.
Yeah.
And then there were a whole lot of other things we didn't know.
Yeah. No, 2020 threw everyone for a loop. So what helped you learn? Was it just experience? Did you go through the, ABA or trade organizations or NABA?
No,
the reps?
The reps are incredible.
I always say I learned bookselling from the reps.
Yeah. I mean, our reps are fabulous and have always been so helpful to us. The publishers have always been extremely helpful to us. Winter Institute, I love. Yeah.
Such a resource.
I think I've missed one or two. I mean, because we can't, obviously, we have small children. We can't both go all the time. But we always get a lot there. I don't know. I've read a lot of business books, which I never thought.
Really? Oh, I didn't.
I mean,
I should have read more accounting books.
Yeah. But I would say the thing that we learned from the most, though, is just making mistakes. Yeah. And having people call us on the mistakes and say, hey, you did this way. This is not the, and be like, oh, wow.
Right. But it's a forgiving community. I mean, your readers are forgiving because they want you there. Yeah. Right? And the publishers need you there. Yeah. So you also live in a very author-rich community, right? That's you draw on local talent as well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the thing that really helped us the most was that we finally, after a couple of years, we started to build actual structure for the staff.
Oh, what an original concept.
It was original to us, let me tell you. It was, I mean, it is night and day. Yeah. Night and day. Yeah. And we just didn't know. We didn't know that.
2020 threw you for a loop, but how many years later you opened up a second store? Don't cry. You should be so proud.
Yeah, I mean, so the second store, our children go to school in Brooklyn Heights, and there hasn't been a bookstore in Brooklyn Heights for decades. Yeah. When I went to school, I went to high school in Brooklyn Heights, and there was a Walden Books there, still on Montague Street, and there was, I think, only one used bookstore still on Montague. There had been several bookstores. There was a children's bookstore.
Yeah, I remember that.
There were tons in the 80s. Yeah. But by the mid-90s, which is sort of when I came to the neighborhood, there was the Walden Books and one used bookstore. And I think the Walden Books closed probably before the year 2000. I mean, I
think so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I left Brooklyn in 90, so...
Yeah.
I don't know what happened
It closed at some point in the 90s, and the neighborhood had been asking us to do it since the second we opened the store on Smith Street. I mean, they were asking for it. And then we started to get some phone calls. I started to get some phone calls from people who were thinking about opening a bookstore in the neighborhood. And my husband just was like, I can't walk our kids to school and pass another bookstore.
Especially when people are asking you to come. So
and so we looked at a lot of spaces, and
were there a lot of spaces available, like Brooklyn Heights?
So many, because so many.
The rents have just
are
out of control.
I mean, I don't want to cause all of your listeners to drop dead at these numbers, so I won't tell you the numbers. But I will tell you that we pay twice as much money as much money in Brooklyn Heights as we do on Smith Street. Twice as much money for the same amount of space.
Wow.
So we weren't going to do it unless we found a really good space. Right. And then we found a really good space. And
I know I haven't seen the new store yet.
It's terrific. Oh. It's terrific. It's right next to the first ever Haagen-Dazs ice cream shop. Not to brag, but the first. There's a plaque outside.
Still remember going to that one.
So it's right next to an ice cream store, and it's 2 blocks away from our kids' school, and we walk past it every single day to and from school. And so it has made I would say it has certainly made our life more complicated, in that there are 2 of them now, and so our staff is significantly bigger.
And do you switch staff, or do they have dedicated staff for each store?
Almost everyone works in both stores. Almost everyone. There are a couple of people who really dislike one
or
store
the
or the other, and so prefer to work at just one. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know if that'll last forever, you know, or if someday we will decide that it's much more efficient, you know, to have two separate staffs.
Right.
I don't know.
No, there is a lot to be said for working with your staff when you have two stores and making them happy. That was what we found the hardest was the whole flow was different, well, especially because we divided up the kids store from the adult store. So all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute, Saturday mornings is slammed with kids, but the afternoon is quiet, whereas the adult store is like crickets in the morning and then 12 noon on the dot. That's when everyone comes in. So it's like, whoa, okay, we've got to rethink our staffing and all that. So there is a lot of growth in that.
But I can tell you for sure, I mean, I will knock on my own forehead, not to jinx myself, but we are the most organized we've ever been. Like, our staff is terrific.
Yeah.
They are smart. They are engaged. They're terrific. I would say our big problem as a bookstore is that because we're in the city, people often leave us to go work in publishing. But,
I mean, what I've found, and I don't know if it's just because we're in the suburbs or what, but a lot of people look at books selling as a through path. And so that was hard. But, you know, when you hire young people, it's like you wish for them to. You know, grow and move forward, and
of course.
It's like, but yes, you do a lot of training for the publishing industry.
We do a lot of training for the publishing industry, and we've gotten good at saying goodbye to people we love. You know.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
I don't say goodbye.
Yeah.
I say see you later.
Well, right, yes. But like that's something that we've gotten so much better at, you know, whereas like in the first couple of years, like when someone left, I was like, oh my God, what have we done? You know, but I'm like, oh no. Yeah. We didn't do anything. We did a good job.
Yeah. I know, and then you mourn the loss of their specialties.
Yeah.
But then there's room for new people to come in, or even people on staff to grow their special brand. So I always love that. What do you mostly do? Do you mostly do the buying? Or are you on the floor? Or
I do the buying. I do most of the adult buying, not all of it. I have been slowly over the years de-accessioning some of my lists to our general manager, who's very, very good at it.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's my primary job. And then at the store, I'm always in the events and marketing meetings, which is once a week. And I mean, I would say I am involved in the buying and in the marketing, really. And then, I mean, our events director, you know, like if mostly she's like, do you have so-and-so's email? And I say, yes. And then I give it to her. Like that's my job, is to be a Rolodex a little bit.
That's great.
Yeah.
The tone, the vibe that you guys have set up in Books Are Magic, what is it and where did it come from? And did you plan it? Did it organically grow? Or
you know, it's so funny. Like, I mean, if I could plan anything, Margot, if I could plan anything, I don't even know what I could do in this world. Because
you could write. That's always your,
I just feel like we never, like, people, when we painted the mural on the side of our store, it was just because there was a mural there. When we rented it, there was a mural of like a guy on a motorcycle.
Okay.
Because the space that we're in had previously been an Italian clothing store that had a decorative motorcycle in it for some reason. I don't know why.
Their icon, okay.
So we were like, can we paint it over that? So that was the whole, like, we just wanted to paint over the motorcycle that was there for no reason. And if we'd thought about it a little bit more, we would have made it a little bit smaller. Because now when someone is standing in the middle taking a picture, which like
they all do.
They all do, but we'd never thought of it. Like, we didn't think of it. We would have made it smaller because now you kind of have to stand in the middle of the street to properly get the whole thing.
I know, and it's iconic, your mural. Every author, every visitor wants their photo.
We use it every day. You know, we take pictures in front of it every day, but things like that, no, we didn't plan anything. We're just lucky morons.
It's from your heart, which is what makes it so...
Yes, we are loving morons. Yeah, and in terms of the voice and the brand, you know, like, I mean, Mike designs everything.
Great.
And so it all looks great.
Yep.
And I'm like the...
Does he do the book displays also?
No.
Okay,
no.
so those are more for the booksellers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just like in terms of like, all our merchandise.
Yes.
All of our
You've
stuff.
got great merch.
Sorry, it's a podcast. You can't see. I have 2 Books Are Magic tote bags right next to us here. But, we always knew that was going to be part of our thing.
Right.
Just because that was really the only thing we had experience with, was like making stuff.
Oh, that's
because we worked for a long time. One of my jobs before I worked at the bookstore and before I published any books was working as a personal assistant to this man named Stephen Merritt, who's in a band called the Magnetic Fields.
Huh.
And every time they went on tour for like 10 years, starting in 2002 until 2012, we went on tour with them, and Mike would help them make all the merch, and we would sell it at the concerts. And we got more experience doing that. Like, that was the experience.
Wait a minute, that you did that as an independent, like as your business or as part of the band?
I worked for him, for Steven, as his personal assistant. But they were just like, somebody has to do this. Emma, do you want to do this? And I was like, okay, fine. And then I went and I did it once by myself, and I was terrible at it, number one. And number two, I was like, guys, can we just have Mike come and do this because he'll be better at it than I am? And they were like, sure. And so then he did all the work and was much better at like driving things or carrying things or whatever. And I was good at talking to people. Yeah. And so we were a good team.
I think that's... My hat is off to you. I mean, to have a husband and wife working together and running, my hat's off to you. But it's obviously you each are bringing different skills, and so therefore...
Yeah. I would say that, like, the only time that really felt like a big problem... it's occasionally a problem, where you're like... You can't complain to me about your boss because your boss is my husband, or, whatever, that kind of thing. But really... The pandemic was the only time where I was really like, God damn, I wish that the person who I was married to was not also in charge of our business, because then I wouldn't have had to be alone with our children for 12 hours every day while he was shipping out books or whatever.
Well, because we became warehouses then,
Yeah, fun stuff.
Wow. So as you say, like running a bookstore takes 150% of your time. Yeah. And then your young family is their needs. But how do you do the writing? Like, how do you pull back to...
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And I'm also, like, horribly addicted to my email and Instagram and my, all of that stuff. I mean, I have zero self-discipline when it comes to lots of things, such as, I don't know, chocolate or rosé. But when it comes to work, I've always been really good at getting my work done. And so the way it works now, like, as there have been different periods where I've been in the store more or less, but like right now, I am deep in edits for a novel, and so I am at the store, available 1 day a week. And those are the days that I have my meetings. Right. I try to schedule all of my buying meetings on that day. And other than that, between the school hours, I am chained to my desk.
That is very disciplined, and I applaud you. But when you have an established store and you have great booksellers, so there's no need for you to be there on a day-to-day basis.
And I mean, it's sad because I miss it. Like it's whenever I'm in the store, I'm like, I love this place. You know?
So I always say it's my happy place. Yeah. When people say, aren't you supposed to be retired? I'm like, but it's like, what am I going to do? It's like, I want to be here. I want to see people. I want to feel the new books coming out. And,
I mean, it's like, it's my world, is the bookstore. Like, it's what I talk about. Like, it's what I think of, like the books and, who's selling and what's selling and who's coming in and who's just shopping and.
So growing up as a daughter of a writer must have also like really informed your path. And
I mean, I knew our local bookstores and libraries extremely well. And I mean, it really is how I grew up. That books were the sort of, I mean, I don't even want to say the word currency, but it was the thing that we talked about. It was the thing that we cared about.
Yeah.
You know, not just like adult novels or like, you know, other novelists who would be around. Although that was very much how I grew up, was at like these, you know, like big dinner parties filled with amazing writers and editors and publishers. But also, like, my mom, for most of my life, ran this early childhood literacy program.
Wow.
And so our house was also always full of picture books and picture book makers. Yeah. And so, I don't know, like, I feel so lucky, and that was my world, and that it still is. Like, the world that I live in is, I mean, you know, it's not the 80s, but really the world that I have built with my family is not dissimilar to the world that I grew up in, and I love that.
What a testimony to your parents. Yeah. Do you ever, I mean, obviously you mine your personal life for your books. Yeah. And This Time Tomorrow is a lot about your relationship with your dad. Yeah. Have you ever thought of a strict memoir?
No,
especially in the vein of how you were brought up and all?
I don't know. Right now, I'm on my way here. I've been listening to Griffin Dunn's memoir, The Friday Afternoon Club. It's delicious.
Wow.
It is. I didn't start listening right away because I was like, is it just going to be about Joan Didion? Like, is it, because she's on the cover. I mean, you know, it's like a family photograph on the cover, and he's there, and he's a teenager, and Joan Didion is there, and you know, and his parents, whatever. And I was feeling some like Joan Didion fatigue.
Yeah.
But then I started, so many friends of mine have read it, and so I have been listening, and he reads it, of course, and it is just like my favorite kind of memoir, because it's not just about Joan Didion. It's about growing up in Hollywood with these sort of like social climby parents who had their own problems, and, you know, Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunner is aunt and uncle, so there's like that scene, and then moving to New York, and he's best friends with Carrie Fisher, and like it's just it's incredible. It's incredible, and I love it, and I don't think I could do it. I think I'm too private, actually.
Right. That's
and
it also it sounds dishy, which makes it really what you want to read, but I don't see you as a dishy person.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe when I'm 60. I don't know. Maybe.
When you have when you have a different perspective.
Maybe. It's possible. I wouldn't say never. Never say never.
So with raising your sons and like revisiting your old favorites, and especially I didn't realize your mom had this experience, and all these new books coming out, has that changed your perspective on children's books? Or
I mean, I think that, you know, there are a lot of people who come into my store, I'm sure they come into your store too, and they complain about the graphic novels. And they say,
it's not real reading.
It's not real books. It's not real books. And I just think how incredible, how lucky for these kids that there's this whole new format that they love.
Yeah, but I also say to the parents, like, you have to think that it is amazing that in this one little cell that this complex thought and ideas and actions are portrayed here, and that's where the kids' imagination can play into. So I say give your kids a lot of credit for expanding, for thinking about what they're reading.
Yeah, and I mean, I loved comic books when I was a kid, like Archie and Veronica, Katie Keene, the fashion model comics. I loved those. But I also read some, like, in retrospect, like, I mean, they weren't like dirty comics, but like there were like kind of sexy comics.
What comics were those?
I mean,
Did I miss that?
There were, because I went to like the comic book store, you know, like there were, that, which doesn't exist anymore in my neighborhood.
We have one. We have a wonderful at East Side Mags in Montclair, so we're thrilled.
I love comic book stores. But
That's funny.
I think that like that. I don't know. So to answer your question, like, I love the graphic novels that exist today, like Jason Reynolds' Stunt Boy, you know, or Raina Telgemeier, or like, I mean, my friend Ruth Chan had a graphic memoir that came out this week called Uprooted.
Yes,
that I just love so much, and I just think you cannot read any of those books and say that it is less than to any degree.
Yeah. But did you come to this through your sons and watching them read? I
mean, I will say, I remember when I was working at Book Court, I remember a certain novelist who is one of my very favorite novelists. I will not name her here.
Okay.
But she was expressing disappointment that her children were reading graphic novels. This was way before I had kids. And I was like, lady, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it was before I had kids, and she may have changed her mind. We'll see. I don't know.
No, but initially also the ones that came out were, Captain Underpants. They were all kind of poopy and naughty.
There are ones that are less profound than others.
But they get the kids laughing and wanting to read it.
Absolutely.
And the whole act of sitting down with a book becomes part of their language.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No snobs. No snobs allowed.
No snobs
I want to put a sign at Books Are Magic that says no snobs allowed.
I know. I feel like we went from when we started in 96, it was still a transitional period where bookstores, I remember not that we had the Dewey Decimal System, but like you had a section for absolutely everything in case someone came in and asked, and we had all the reference books that like we don't need anymore. Nobody asks for them.
Yeah.
So we had a transition from having to represent everything to realizing, okay, we can decide what we think our readers are interested in and what we like. And by then you get to know who your people are and what books you should bring in for them. And I remember one year when we realized that, wow, we are committing to this, the books that we pulled to return, it was very sad, but again, to survive as a business, you have to have on the shelves what people are going to buy.
Yeah.
So you guys are very committed to events and to the authors. Is it because of your experience of being an author?
I guess so. I mean, I think that it's such a huge part of our business model.
And it was from the get-go.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always understood that, like, there are a lot of bookstores in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And with a few exceptions, we all sell the same things. You know, like, we all sell the same books for the same amount of money. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the events were important to be like, no, come here. Come here. Come to this one.
Yeah.
Because we have so-and-so, and you can get your book signed. And it was always sort of part of how we imagined the success of the store. Yeah. And it still is. I mean, certainly.
No, it's like you can tell it's a really important part of what you guys do. We started devoting time to author events on a much smaller scale, obviously, because I always figured back then when we started that if you can't celebrate in your own hometown, that was the days when Barnes & Noble would have the big author events, and if our people were not on that level, they wouldn't get that. So I said, well, of course we're going to celebrate here. And then we had just like 10 authors in town. Now we have over 100. It's like this insane community.
And like the entire staff of the New York Times, I think.
Yes, that as well, and all the publishing professionals. No, it makes for a really vibrant programming now that we have. Kathryn and I sat down to do our fall programming, and we have 3 to 4 events every single week in September and October, which you're used to.
I know. It's exhausting, though. Yeah. It's exhausting.
It is. The problem is also, we have a smaller audience than you guys in Brooklyn, but you want to give each author and each event the same amount of attention and the same amount of marketing. And sometimes it gets a little lost if you have a full schedule.
Yeah, it's hard.
So when you started in 2017, that Brooklyn had already exploded as like the independent bookstore mecca, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were tons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now there are even more.
Yeah, it's true. There are more all the time.
Yeah, it's like shelf awareness, like, oh, another Brooklyn bookstore.
Yeah.
Does that figure into your planning or your thoughts or anything? Or do you feel secure where you guys are?
In theory, yes. Yeah. Does it make me nervous when a big bookstore were to open a few blocks away from us? Would that make me really nervous? Yes.
Yeah.
Because, the truth is that I would say probably 80% of our customers also shop at the other independent bookstores.
Yes.
Like, I feel like
they're devoted indie people.
Like, so
that's what we have.
It's not that I think that, like, no one would come anymore.
Right.
But it is true that, we have some authors who, like, I would say we thought of as sort of like our authors who maybe they move closer to another bookstore or something like that, and then they sort of move to that bookstore.
Yeah.
That happens, and it's like you can't get mad at someone for
that's
doing that.
Natural transitions.
But it is funny to be in a small business where you're like, oh, that actually really does affect us, though.
Yeah.
Like if an author does like a pre-order campaign with us, that's like a, and they publish regularly and they sell hundreds of books or whatever, and then they take that somewhere else. That's serious.
Affects,
we notice that.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes people sort of don't understand how much that actually really does affect independent bookstores. Like that it's not.
So you don't feel like your biggest competition is the online behemoth?
Oh no.
Interesting.
No. I mean,
because
though, if people are buying books from Amazon, they're not my people. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that we've lost. Yeah. Good luck with your life. You have nothing to do with me.
That's a good mantra. We'll try that.
Yeah, like I honestly, I don't think about Amazon.
Yeah. Well, you have more independent competition.
Yeah.
Than we do here. We have a handful of really great bookstores around us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but I want to say that, like, I am friendly with several of the other independent bookstore owners in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but with enough where I feel like if we're having a problem or there's something going on, I can and I do turn to them and say, all the time.
Yeah.
And it always makes me feel better to be part of that community and to be able to walk into someone else's bookstore and be like, can we talk about it? You know, or call them on the phone. Like, it is reassuring always.
Yeah, because I always feel like as a bookseller, you work in isolation.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have your own booksellers, but we're so focused on the little world we've built in our four walls, and which is why the conferences are so important, but to be able to go to someone who has similar circumstances, who's in the neighborhood, who, like, it's always good to have that touchstone and say, what, is this me?
Or or like, how are you handling this? Like, and I mean, often I feel better just having those conversations, like, even though the conversations in themselves haven't solved whatever problem I was, whatever thing I was worried about, just having those conversations, like with Stephanie Valdez, who owns Community, or Christine, who owns Word, or like, the folks at Greenlight, like, I mean, just like, I have so many people to go to, and that always makes me feel better.
Yeah. It is an amazing community, I think, in general, how supportive the independent bookstores are of each other.
Yeah.
And so thankfully it's not a cutthroat business in that respect, and we can build our own special worlds. And so that kind of brings us to our personal lives and what are you reading, as though you have time to read anything.
Oh, I have time. Well, so I mentioned I've been listening to Griffin Dunn's memoir.
Yeah.
I just had the great honor and pleasure of interviewing Rachel Kushner about her new book, Creation Lake, at the Brooklyn Public Library. And man, like, I think she's the smartest woman I've ever talked to.
She's
like,
amazing.
And I was so nervous. Nervous.
Because?
Well, because like her book is all about, like, I mean, it's a fun book. It's a fun book.
Yeah,
but it's also about, like, these, like, French activists who are, like, planning a sort of environmental activism event to criticize the government, and there are all these French philosophers mentioned. And I'm like, oh, are these real? Are these fictional? I don't know.
Did you have to do some research?
I did so much research. I did so much research. But what is amazing about her is that even though she's the smartest person you'll talk to, she is so welcoming and so not a snob.
Wow.
That like we had a fabulous conversation, and that book is terrific. And today it was longlisted for the National Book Award. So
great.
That's good.
That's very exciting.
And I mean, this summer, it was a funny reading summer for me because I read 2 of my father's books. So Penguin Random House they just started these reissues for my dad's books. They're doing, I can't even tell you how many. I think there are like 6 or 7 total that they're doing over the next couple of years.
Wow.
And the first one came out this summer, Shadowland. It was published in 1980. And I hadn't read it since the early 90s, I would say, which is when I started reading his books. And it is so much fun.
Oh.
It is so much fun. And it's...
And was it a different read?
Oh, completely. I mean,
for you to read it now?
He wrote it when he was younger than I am now. He was in his mid-30s. It was published the same year that I was born.
Wow.
And so it's about these 2 boys at a prep school who then go to Vermont to stay with one of their uncles for the summer. And the uncle is like kind of like an evil magician. And it's all about these boys and magic and in the woods. And it's like also all about how much he hated the prep school that he went to in Milwaukee. And he, spoiler alert, he sets the whole thing on fire. Like he sets the building on fire. And I'm like, that's so funny, Dad. That's so funny.
That's how you resolve those issues.
Yeah. And then the other book of his that I read this summer was the book that he was working on when he died, which was unfinished. I mean, he stopped working on it a couple of months before he died.
Wow.
Because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to, and I think he just sort of wanted to take the pressure off of himself.
Huh.
But, I mean, he was a man who, like, never, ever took a vacation. I mean, talk about me working a lot. Like, I mean, he had no other responsibilities, to be clear. To be very clear. But every family vacation we ever went on, we'd be sitting by the pool at Club Med or whatever, and he would be writing. So I read this book that he was working on, and it was so delightful. So delightful. And I just felt so happy to be with him in those pages.
Are you going to bring it forth to the world?
It's going to be published by a small press.
Okay. Who's going to finish it though?
No one's finishing.
Okay.
No. It's unfinished. It's unfinished, which is what he wanted. We talked about it. We talked about having someone else finish it, whether it was me or someone else, and he decided that he didn't want that, which is good, honestly. Like, I mean, I would have been terrible at it.
Well, it would have been hard.
I mean, like in his books, like especially his later books, like there's a lot of like torture and murder and serial killers.
It's not your bailiwick.
It's not really my bag. When I wrote Laura Lamont, my first novel, Laura Lamont covers like decades and decades of this woman's life, and when I finished, or at some point I was like, Dad, you'd be so proud of me. I'm just like killing so many characters. And he said, Emma, are you killing them or are they just dying?
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, they're just dying. They're just dying. I mean, I'm killing them because they're dying. But I have yet to have a murder in one of my books. So maybe someday.
Well, I this summer read All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker.
How was it?
It was great. I mean, I wanted, sort of a murder mystery and everything. But what I loved about the way he wrote about it, the chapters were short, which is great for summer reading. But he didn't, finish the action. He kind of left you hanging so that you had to figure it out. It was a very interesting way of writing.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. And then I read Catherine Newman's Sandwich because as Lee Boudreau said, this should be the summer I turned 50 because we had all these great, women of a certain age transition books.
Yeah.
And then the next one I'm going to start is The Barn by Wright Thompson, which, is about the Emmett Till murder, but the full background of Mississippi at the time. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that book sounds so good.
Yeah.
I am... All right, well, if you like, I won't tell you too much about the book that I'm nearly done with because it's not going to be out for so long, but I will tell you that it is a woman at 50.
That's great.
Life transition.
But that is what's selling. That's what people need. And that's what you're so good at is, as I said, like just taking your own experiences, women's life experiences, and putting them to words.
Well,
so I am really looking forward to that. Right. And that is not going to be like probably for 2 years, you think?
Well, I don't have a pub date yet. I think it'll be spring of 26, like early spring.
Okay, so actually
February.
Yeah, actually relatively soon.
We'll see.
The publishing parlance, right?
We'll see. Aww. I've got a lot of notes to get through from my very, very good editor, so
that's great.
I'm working on it.
We're so thrilled that you took the time out of your insanely busy schedule to come out here today and talk with me.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Emma and Margot. And Emma, we truly appreciate that you came out to record with us and sign books and make a banned book video for us in Montclair. And listeners, we've got signed stock of Emma's books in store, and you can find all the books they've talked about in our show notes and at watchungbooksellers.com.
Here are a few of our many upcoming events. Tonight, Tuesday, September 24th, we're hosting Honor Moore and Clara Bingham to discuss Honor's memoir, A Termination, alongside Claire's oral history of feminist icons, the movement. Proceeds from ticket sales are going to Planned Parenthood, so come out and enjoy this talk. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the 25th, the Montclair Literary Festival and Montclair Public Library host Nicholas Kristoff discussing his memoir, Chasing Hope.
Thursday, September 26th, we've got Shirley Jackson award-winning author Sophie White with our former guest Laura Sims to talk about Sophie's truly creepy book, Where I End. I am reading this currently, and it is spooky and perfect for Halloween season, so come on out and enjoy that. Next week, on Tuesday, October 1st, we've got two events. A meet and greet with local author Nicole Bocat, celebrating her novel, Will End in Fire. And then following, we have Jason Lipschutz, author of It Starts With One, a comprehensive biography of the band Linkin Park.
We've got more great events, book clubs, and kids' story time, so be sure to check them out in our newsletter, show notes, or at watchungbooksellers.com. The Watchung Booksellers podcast is produced by Kathryn Counsell and Marnie Jessup and is recorded at Silverstream Studio in Montclair, New Jersey. The show is edited by Kathryn Counsell and Brie Testa. Special thanks to Timmy Kaleni and Derek Mathias. Original music is composed and performed by Violet Mujica. Art and design and social media by Evelyn Moulton. Research and show notes by Caroline Shurtleff. Thank you to the staff at Watchung Booksellers and the Kids Room for all their hard work and love of books.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, please like, follow, and share it. You can follow us on social media at Watchung Booksellers. And if you have any questions or ideas, you can reach us at wbpodcast@watchungbooksellers.com.
We'll see you next time. Until then, for the love of books, keep reading.